Okay, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to get started, and it's a very exciting day for us, Aunt Genevieve, because we have a chance to talk with you just for a few minutes tonight. I came over to see you because I'm working on a documentary of Mom's life, and I've gone through a number of pictures, and I've shown you a lot of them. But just to get started, in your own words, Aunt Genevieve, when you think back to the times that you and Mom were growing up, when y'all were children, what were those days like? In your own words, what do you remember?
They were beautiful days. I mean, she was a little girl compared to me, and she always looked up to me. Like, well, if Mother wasn't around, like somebody that could take care of her.
I remember there was one time when we all got together, and Mom, I think, was reliving an incident where I think she remembers taking your photograph. If I'm not mistaken, I think that she took your photograph to school because she wanted to show all of her classmates how beautiful her sister was. Do you remember that?
I sure do. She always was bragging about me. Always.
She still does.
Like a little girl, like a little. There's so much difference, I mean, in age that. But she was always very proud to show me around. She would take my picture without me knowing, and to show the girls in school and in every place. I mean, she always looked up to me.
What school did y'all go to? Do you remember I know that there was you're a little bit older than Mom. There's a little difference between as far as the grades are concerned.
I think it was Harris.
Was it Harris Elementary?
Junior School. It was on Pruitt Street, I think.
Uh-huh.
It's been so long. I mean,
sure.
That was a high school.
Sure. And what was it like growing up in those years at Genevieve?
It was very, very nice. I mean, we were many sisters. We were 7 sisters and 1 brother. And I was 1 older than me. My brother was the oldest, and then an older sister, and then me.
You were number 3?
Yes. So, very respectful family. I mean, the little ones, they always looked up to the older ones. And of course, we had, they knew that from our parents that they should do what we told them, because we were more experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a beautiful growing up together. I mean,
what was my mom like as a little girl?
she was a pretty little girl. She used to wear 2 braids that Mother used to fix on her little face. But they were all, she and Louise, now Louise was, they were closer. Mm-hmm. Eleanor and Louise. You don't see them, you didn't see them fighting like some sisters fight. I mean, if we told them to do something, they would do it. Mm-hmm. They would not fuss about it because they had that order from our mother. Mm-hmm. So we grew up in a very, very good family that you didn't see much fight.
Tell me a little bit about your mother.
Oh, my mother was always busy with so many. I mean, and we tried, my older sister and I, we tried to take as much work off of her hands as we could. Mm-hmm. the washing of all the family. I know that was pretty heavy on her, so my older sister and I took over so that my mother could rest. She couldn't. And these little ones, they helped us in anything they could. I mean, they were, I don't know about this little girls, Jennifer's children are growing up like that. I mean, the older ones can tell the little ones what to do, and they do it. I mean, they don't fuss about it. And that's the way we grew up.
Tell me about your father.
Oh, my dad was a hard-working man. Always busy. And we had a wonderful life. We had a wonderful life. We had wonderful parents. I mean.
Now, Genevieve, the house on Klein Street, did y'all ever live somewhere before Klein Street, or is that your earliest memory of Klein Street?
He rented homes. We lived on Wyoming Street, I think, and the last place we lived was on Iowa, on the south side. And then he bought the home on Klein Street, so then we never had to move anymore.
And you remember that when grandfather actually bought the house on Klein Street?
Yes, I think I was about 11 or 12 years old, I think, at the time. And we were very happy, I mean, that he had bought a home so we wouldn't have to be moving around. And we stayed there until we got married, I mean, all of us. So we had wonderful parents, wonderful parents.
Where was grandfather from originally? Was he from San Antonio, or did he? Where are his roots?
There's a place where they call Burke's Mill. It's here, not very far from San Antonio, and that's the place where my dad was born, around there. I mean,
did your father? Did he have any brothers?
Yes. He had 3 brothers. One was Uncle John. The other was Uncle Joe. And the third one was Seferino.
Okay.
His brother Seferino, that he lived in this little town. Can't remember the name of this little town that's near San Antonio.
Okay.
But we had very good relationships. I mean, he would take us on weekends when he didn't work. He would take us to where they
go see his brothers.
Where his brothers lived, and we had good relationships with everybody. I mean, we were all very nice.
Tell me about a little bit on your mother's side now. Did you have uncles
on my mother's
or
side,
aunts?
she had 2 brothers. Uncle Fred and
was Willie?
And, Willie.
Really?
And Fred and Anastasio. Anastasio was the youngest. That was my grandfather's name, Anastasio.
That was your grandfather on your mother's side?
On my mother's side.
Anastasio Ramos? Anastasio Ramos. And did you get a chance to meet your grandfather? Was he already deceased by the time you?
No, they died before. You know, we were lucky enough to meet him.
Okay.
But my grandmother on my mother's side was about the only one that we really met. I mean, and she lived for a few years.
What was her name again?
Simona Martinez.
Simona Martinez. Okay.
That was my mother's mother.
Okay.
And
when you were growing up there on Klein Street, and you did a lot of chores as children, can you do you remember any funny stories that you can relate to us about oh, you need some water or something? There we go. Yeah. Can you relate any funny stories that you remember involving you and my mom as y'all were children growing up during that era? Anything at all?
I don't, everything was so quiet at the time, and we didn't go out much.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, when you have a lot of children, the bigger ones take care of the smaller ones, and they go out together themselves, which is good, I mean.
Okay.
Because they had to go out, I mean. And the bigger ones of us, it was Janie, my sister, that passed away, and me, we took care of the smaller ones.
Mm-hmm.
And they were always good children to take care of. They had good beginnings, I mean. Louise, Mary Louise, and Eleanor, and Chelito. Chelito,
Mm-hmm.
she was a little angel, I mean. You
Mm-hmm.
tell her to do something, she would do it. Just don't make her mad.
What do you remember? Tell me a little bit about at the time that Mom met my father. What do you remember during those times that Dad was introduced to your family? I know at first Grandfather had a hard time with you know the.
Not really.
Or
not really. I mean, at first he didn't want him to come in, of course.
Sure.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you know how he was.
Of course.
I think
Mm-hmm.
she has told you.
Sure. Many times.
She was very, very, very strict. I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both of them told me that.
I am the oldest. I was the oldest there because Janie had already. She skipped and
Mm-hmm.
she got married. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and she would run if.
Mm-hmm. So you were the next one in line.
I
and,
was the next one in line. So when Joe would come and serenade me,
Mm-hmm.
he never did get out of the car. In the car, somebody was always had it running.
Really?
Had it running. And so when they started singing,
Mm-hmm.
and if my dad was around, he would get his rifle and open the door, and and they flew.
And that was with your Joe as well?
Huh?
That was with Joe? Or
Yes.
that was with you?
Yes. Afterwards, I mean, I think Mother had a talk with him or something, I mean, and he did permit him to come and see me at the house.
Mm-hmm.
But that was way, way, way after
Sure.
he ran him away.
What was your initial impression of my dad and
Oh, he
Genevieve?
was nice. I mean, he was always respectful and nice. I mean, I liked him. I always loved him. Some people would say, oh, we saw Eleanor with a little old man just because he had gray hair.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They didn't see his face.
Mm-hmm.
He had a very young face with gray hair. And he was nice. I mean, he was always real good to me.
Tell me about the times.
We loved him very much.
Tell me about the times he would come over and play dominoes with Grandfather.
very often. Very often, but we didn't butt in for nothing because he let my father win. So of course my father was the happiest man in the world. So, as soon as he saw him coming to play with him, that's all he cared about. So, we had a very good time with your father. Very good time.
Now, if I'm not mistaken,
And he was
Sure.
good to everybody. I mean, your dad, I mean, he was deputy sheriff or something.
Mm-hmm.
He must have been tough with somebody else, but he was very nice to us all the time. I mean, I remember when he was sick that afterwards that we were older and all of that, I remember when Joe, my son, would take me over there because he was sick. I mean, and we just hated those times. I mean, when we lost him. But God has a way of doing things that we hate to see, but we had good relationship.
You know, Aunt Genevieve, we found a lot of reel-to-reel tapes, and I think we've already shown you one of them that's been transcribed, where it's got a family gathering and people are singing in the background. Uncle Joe, grandfather. What do you remember about those?
Yeah, well, we got more together with Eleanor and your dad than we did with Francis and Richard at that time. I don't know exactly why, but we got more get-togethers with Eleanor and your dad. It was nice.
And Genevieve, I remember Mom relating to me during the war years, World War II.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. Do you remember when you first learned that Japan had bombed us at Pearl Harbor? Do you remember that day?
1941.
Yes, ma'am.
I remember that day. Yes, I do.
How did you learn about it? Do you remember?
I think, I don't remember exactly how, but we had blackouts. And I was an air raid warden.
What does that mean?
Huh?
What does that mean? Tell me what that means, air raid warden.
The ones that took care of the neighborhood, of the neighborhood only, to see that everybody had blackouts, that they didn't have any lights, because we didn't want to be bombed, and we had to see. So Joe was also an air raid warden, so he went to one side of the street and I went to the other side to see that everybody had lights out. And we had pretty good, they done what we told them. So
Mom remembers that. She used to tell us about.
She does?
Yes, about those
She was
those years. She remembers those years very vividly.
See, how old is your mother?
She'll be 88.
88. How old am I?
You're going to be 95
95.
in November.
So it's about a 7-year difference.
I
Which good,
I
Mom.
knew it was about 7 or maybe more. I
About a
know
7-year.
that she was just a little tiny little girl that came up to me, whatever she wanted, and if she couldn't get it from Mother, she would come up to me, and I would see that she'd get it. But not telling Mom, of course.
Sure.
I mean, I didn't want to go. I don't want her to know that I was going over her authority. But that little one, I mean, she...
Do you remember when my mother was born?
Huh?
Do you remember when she was born, when she was a baby?
So, you know, at that time, there was so much respect and something in the families. It's not like today. They would put us all out. When mother was ready to deliver, they would put us all out, and for us not even to hear her cry or whatever. But sometimes we did, I mean, because they couldn't put us far enough. But she was a beautiful baby.
Was she delivered at home?
Most of them. Most of them were delivered at home, yes. I don't think my mother ever went to a hospital.
Now, this would have been at a location other than Klein. When she was born, y'all weren't...
No, we lived in Florida Street.
Okay. I got a rental house on Florida Street?
A rental house on Florida Street, and it was a 2-story house, I remember.
Okay.
And I think most of the children were born there, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember very well.
But do you remember, I mean, I want to make sure I understand you correctly. Do you remember the day that she was born? Basically, the children were ushered out of the house at the time that grandmother actually had the baby.
Every time. And my dad didn't even want us to hear her crying, you know, because before she never went to a hospital. So we could hear her cry in pain, I mean, and that hurted us. We didn't know what was happening. And so after that, I mean, they would put us in a place or go out or do something so that we won't even hear her cry.
Sure.
So he was very good to my mother, but I mean, at that time, I mean, either it was because they couldn't afford it. We were all kids, so we don't know the reason. But they had so many, I mean, I think we were 8 girls and 1 boy, so that's quite a load, I mean, for just one man. So he was a very good father. I mean, he took good care of all of us.
Now, your grandfather was basically like a self-employed independent contractor, is that correct? Or did he have...
My dad?
Yes, ma'am.
He was a building contractor.
Building contractor.
Yes. He would take big jobs and hire people to... I have some pictures someplace around where he had... this little girl here, your mother, she was good at figures. I was too, but then if I had somebody to help me, that's it. Thank you, Jesus. And she was good at that. So she used to help Dad with the, you know, whatever he needed. My dad didn't have one day of school, and my dad could make fractures that I don't even know how to make. And he did know. He had very good friends, Anglos. I don't know if my dad ever had a good friend in our race. I mean, oh yes, he had Tafoya. Tafoya was a good friend of my dad's. The old Tafoya.
Which one is that? Do you remember?
Johnny Tafoya's father.
Oh, okay.
Johnny Tafoya's father was a lawyer, was a judge. He was a judge.
And he was a friend of Grandpa's?
Yes. That's why when my brother had a lot of tickets for speeding, and he would just take them to Tafoya.
It's good to know judges. We come in handy every once in a while, you know. Every once in a while.
My brother, I tell you, my brother, he liked to drive fast, I mean. So he got quite a few tickets. And Tafoya was very good. Even the son, did you know the son?
Yes, I did.
He was in the Smith Young Tower.
I believe he was over at the Tower Life building, maybe, or something like that.
Right.
I didn't know that my grandfather and his father knew each other, though. That's an interesting.
Yes. The
Interesting
old man
fact.
now, Tafoya, the old judge. He was a very good friend of my dad. That's why my brother never paid those tickets.
Uncle Leo was lucky.
Yeah, he just took them to him. And
It's good to have connections. It's good to have connections. You know that I am working on a project. In fact, I've been working on it for months now, about 4 or 5 months, for Mom's birthday. And I know that you're going to be there on the night on her birthday, on Sunday. But what would you like to say to Mom on her birthday?
Keep it up, sister. Being a good mother. You were a wonderful wife. They lived a beautiful life. And just keep it up. You only have one more left there with you.
There's one more. That's me, right?
That's you.
That's me, right?
That's you.
Well, Aunt Genevieve, I know that I'm keeping you, from your family here for a little bit. I was wondering if we could maybe do a series of interviews where we could go through a few of the different eras in more detail about your sisters, and I'd like to know certainly as much as you're comfortable remembering and telling us about when you had gotten married and little Joey. I remember Joey coming over as a child when you brought him over, and Victor and Larry and Joey would get together, and there was never a dull moment when those kids got together. You remember your little Ford Falcon? Your little car?
Oh, yes.
I remember your Falcon. I remember your Falcon.
Take it.
He would take it. And they would put Joey up in the front seat. He was a good driver, I think, and I think they would put
I was visiting Eleanor and Emmanuel, so we went in the back. They have a beautiful back yard there. So him and Gabe, not Gable,
Victor and Larry.
Victor and Larry, the big ones.
The older ones, they would. I remember that because I never went with them. I'm innocent, okay? But I think Joey would. They would get a phone book.
You were frightened.
I was.
You could see his little eyes there. He's got big eyes anyway. So they were looking for the car that wasn't there, and then the boys either. So they would ask him. I don't remember what he answered.
I don't remember either, but all I remember is that hearing from Victor and Larry later on, how I think Joey, they would get phone books, and they would put a couple of phone books on the seat, I guess, to help him look over the steering column.
That's your dad.
He was. Well, Joey was just. God, just. Joe is born. See, he's basically around
53.
53. So he is a couple of years older than Victor. 2 years younger than Larry. Larry was born in 51. So, they were kids.
They're all from the 50s.
Yeah.
He barely made it.
Yeah. I was born in 57. So, and Lenny was 59. So she barely made it. Well, Aunt Genevieve, I want to thank you for giving me this time today.
Oh, mijo, I'll give you all the time. I have more time than I'm bored, not having nothing to do.
Well, we have a lot of things to do. Because what I'd like to do is, we can set some appointments together. I'd like to go and sit down with you and just let you go through your pictures and any documents and relive, so we can preserve it. That's my purpose. Is I want to preserve for future relatives yet not even born, so that they will have memories of these days, memories of the Martinez family, memories that they can have always.
You know, now that you're saying that, there's been so many years now that we haven't seen the Martinez, my dad's family.
Mm-hmm.
They lived in Seguin,
Mm-hmm.
around Seguin area there,
Mm-hmm.
and we haven't seen any of them. One of the nieces came at one time and lived in that house at the end of the block here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think she came to work or something here in San Antonio, and
Mm-hmm.
we didn't know about it. She could have stayed here with me,
Mm-hmm.
but
Well, like I was telling you earlier, I wanted to work on our family tree so that I can try to trace as many of the descendants,
yes,
and I'd like to find as much information as I can about
Okay.
grandfather, and even I know that it's hard, but if we start someplace, we could probably find, some information now with the internet, with the new technology.
he had three brothers. There were four besides him. Four with him. And I think they're all. I don't know if his sister is alive or not, but she used to live here in San Antonio, and I was.
Grandfather had a sister as well. He had a
A
sister.
sister.
Remember her name?
Mi tía Catarina. Eleanor
Okay.
remembers the name Catarina.
Catarina. Okay.
We didn't see them very much because they live in Seguin, around the area, that Seguin area,
Mm-hmm.
and not all the time Dad could take us, but so we hadn't seen a lot of that family in years and years.
Well, it'd be good to find out what happened to people.
I think his sister, if she's alive, she lives here in San Antonio.
Hmm.
And Catarina Vitela,
Okay.
that's the name of the man she married and had the children.
We'll try to run some of that information through the computer and see what we can find out.
Okay.
But maybe next week, if you have some time, maybe I could come back. Whenever I don't want to bother you, and I don't want to bother the children.
Honey, I don't have nothing to do.
But I would like to show you what I'm working on thus far, and then maybe you can help me fill in some of the gaps.
Okay.
And then we'll just continue to work. And I'd like to do more interviews with you to trace even more than what we've been able to do this evening. Is that a deal?
Oh, that's a deal.
Okay, here, shake my hand.
Bless you.